What's up, everybody? Travis from the Itch to Fish here, coming at you with my last and final update on the St. Clair River of how to catch walleye at any time of the year and any time of the day. Last thing we're going to talk about here is when the sun goes down, can't catch them jigging. They're just not biting. Spinner fishing died out about an hour ago. What do I do now? There's really two methods, two things that work phenomenally well, and we're going to go over them both. One of them you don't actually even need a boat for, and we'll talk about that too. But first method is shore fishing. In the middle of the night, what walleyes do is they'll start crashing the shore looking for bait. If you've been on the St. Clair River or walked the shore in the middle of the night, anywhere near a light, you would see that there are trillions of minnows from all different sizes that walleye just love to feed on. I've been there before I started going out in the boat where I'd be waiting in the middle of the river there, or not the middle, but close to shore, and I've had walleye actually hit me in the chest from chasing these minnows around. Really cool sight to see. You can check out my Instagram for some evening fishing from shore. But my method that I use is get some waders, go out to about I'd say waist deep. You don't really want to go much farther than that, especially in the middle of the night, and if you're fishing alone, especially. Find a rock to stand on. You usually find them. But there's also a lot of spots along the shore too that you can cast from. But also keep in mind that if you found an easily accessible spot on the river, lots of other people will probably find that exact same spot. So just keep in mind that find a secluded spot. Start wading with waders about to your waist, depending on how tall you are. I'm not very tall myself, so I like to use the waist method there. All I do in the middle of the night, 1/8 ounce Moon Eye Jig by VMC. You can see there is an eye missing from there. That would be from catching so many walleye in this. So, and my favorite go-to bait by far is the Pearl, either Mr. Twister, or this is actually a new favorite of mine. This is called the Sassy Grub, also in that pearl color. Seemed to outproduce a little bit more for me this year. Early May on the St. Clair River to end of May, you'll be able to catch them and start limiting out from shore, which is also really cool. I've had nights, not this year, but last year was absolutely insane. Nights where I caught over 100 walleye just fishing from shore from about 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. Granted, I fished all night, but I've had triple-digit nights just because they come crashing on those minnows, and they come by the truckloads through there. And there have been times where I would just, every cast, get a hit. Super cool to do. But the other method, if you do have a boat, this is really what everybody on the St. Clair River is doing. When evening rolls around, you're going to be seeing a lot of boats starting to anchor up. And they're anchoring up anywhere from 18 to 25 feet deep. Now, I've seen people do this a little bit deeper, but 18 to 25 really seems to be the magic number for what's called whip fishing. It's the term used in the St. Clair River area. There might be a few other things that people call this all over the world, but in the St. Clair River, whip fishing or whipping has really been the go-to, and they've really become the capital of the world doing it in the middle of the night. So when it gets dark out, and I highlighted this a little bit in my my intro to this series, walleye will be doing a few different things when the sun goes down. Obviously, they have a wall eye. Their eyes allow them to see a lot better in the middle of the night than their prey, giving them a competitive advantage. So in the middle of the night, walleye love to feed just for that reason, especially in the summertime when the water's a little bit warmer. Because they do have such a competitive advantage in the middle of the night, they can see minnows 1,000 times better than those minnows can see them, and so just provides them an easy meal. So what are they doing at night? That's the really big question that you got to ask yourself if you want to figure out how to catch them. Number one, we talked about it earlier, they're crashing the shorelines looking for minnows. Number two is they're coming up off the bottom and starting to suspend. And when they're doing that, they're looking upwards to see minnows like this being the moon will be shining down on them, and you'll be able to see these minnows silhouetted in the water. And that's what the walleye are keying on, is those silhouetted little bait balls. So how do we do it? We talked about the one method. We cast, a twister tail by all these minnows. They're going to jump on that. Number two is this whipping method. People like to complicate it a lot more than it has to be. It's kind of like Wall Street and in the financial system, is they try to throw a lot of things at you that you might not understand, so you don't go and do it. But again, you guys need to know the truth, and you guys need to catch fish. And at the end of the day, and there's so many thousands of fish in that river system that it doesn't matter who's out there, how many boats are out there. We're all going to be catching fish together. We're all going to be slapping five at the boat launch at the end of the night. So this is whip fishing. I'm going to be tying a 3-way swivel right here. My main line is going to be going up, attached to a 6 to 1 foot, 1 ounce to 2 ounce, sometimes even 3 ounce if you really want to, sinker. This could be anything from a bullet weight to an egg sinker to a pyramid sinker. It really doesn't matter the weight because that's not really what's going to be spooking the fish or catching the fish. That's really just going to be how you're moving your bait down the river system. So I'm anchored up. If you're feeling crazy, you can even put your trolling motor on spot lock. I've been known to do that too. It's worked a little bit better. It's a little bit easier too, to move spots around. I mean, obviously it's a lot of stress on the trolling motor, but it does keep you in one spot just like an anchor would. So I do recommend that if you have a full battery on your trolling motor. But if you're only using the trolling motor to get you from A to B, do not do that. You don't want to be stranded out there in the middle of the night. So dropping everything here. So I got my 3-way swivel attached to my dropper, which will be, again, 1 ounce to 2 ounces is usually my go-to. I'm able to cover a lot more ground that way than like a 3 ounce. Going this way on my 3-way swivel, I have a 6-foot leader leading to a floating Rapala. This is the best, without a doubt, color on the St. Clair River in the middle of the night. This is the F11 floating Rapala in the vampire color on the St. Clair River. It is dynamite. It will outfish anything 2 to 1 minimum. Now, I talked about in my spinner video that really color and size doesn't matter. Color does matter a little bit on the St. Clair River. Now, I also love my blue and white floater, as well as my husky jerks in 10 to 12. Usually work pretty well. Now, some people will tie a pencil plug about 3 feet and then another line from the pencil plug to this Rapala. When they do that, they will always say they will catch 50 fish to 1 on that last Rapala to that pencil jig. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the middle one, you don't really need it. Again, we're not trying to complicate things. We're not trying to make this some crazy method that nobody can do. We're trying to make this as easy as possible. Plain and simple. So I only ever run 1. 2 is just, there's too many hooks. It's too crazy. I never catch anything on the middle hook anyway. Only have 1, 6 to 8 feet from my 3-way. Now, how does this work and what do you do? So, dropping my sinker all the way down to the bottom. Once it hits, this will start to spread out in the water column. Obviously, it is a floater, so it'll float all the way up to the end of that line. Now this is a river system, so this is simply floating there and still moving. It's still got the presentation as if you were reeling it, because you have the current running against him. So we're running now, again, 6 to 8 feet back. This is probably floating up anywhere from 4 to 5 feet. Sometimes, depending on the speed of the river that night, it could be anywhere from, 2 feet down to 5 feet up in that water column. And again, walleyes are looking up, ready to attack prey. So what do? I'm casting I'm letting down this weight till it hits the bottom. Once it hits the bottom, again, I'm using my my bottom bouncer as my pole here. Once it hits the bottom, what it's going to do is you're going to feel that pressure on the bottom. All I'm simply going to do, as soon as I feel that pressure on the bottom, I'm going to whip it. This is why it got its name, whipping. I'm going to whip my pole back pretty quick, pretty quick flip. A lot of people will use like a 4-foot rod with a line counter on it, just because all night long you're doing this, back and forth, back and forth. Again, if you want to get really into this whipping, you can do that, but I don't. Again, I don't necessarily see why that's super beneficial. Again, I do get the, you want a stiff rod because you're doing this, and you want it smaller because you're doing it all night. But at the same token, you can use any rod and it'll work just all the same. So I'm bringing it down. When I'm whipping that, what this jig is doing, or what this weight is doing on the bottom of the water, it's whipping up, okay? And the bait 6 to 8 feet back is shooting through the water column, okay? Shooting through. If I'm a walleye and I'm seeing this, just kind of hanging out right here in this same spot, and it whips, what it does is it triggers everything in that walleye to go and smack this thing. So that's what it does. It goes and it smacks this thing. You're not going to necessarily always feel that hit, when you're whipping it back the first time. When you go and the weight settles back down and you whip it again, there's usually some weight there, and that's when they're following that thing through the water column, and as it's slowly starting to rise back up, they're smacking it. And then when you go to whip it again, they're going to be on the end of that line. Very simple. Very simple strategy. Letting it hit the bottom, whipping it back up, letting it hit the bottom, whipping it back up. I usually do that about 2 times. And then if I'm not getting bit on my third whip, I'm letting some line out. So what's going to happen? As soon as I whip back, I'm going to let some line out. If I'm using a 1 ounce, that's going to float down the river a little ways before it crashes back down. What that does is it simply just makes up more ground. We are hunkered down in one spot, so we're only got about 200 yards to work with here, max. So, you're not really making up a whole lot of water if we're just doing this in the same spot all night, whipping it back and forth. But I can tell you and promise you, if you go get an F11 floating Rapala, vampire color, any color will produce. I've caught them on all colors. Okay, don't let that distract you. But if you can find the vampire, definitely hit that. You can go on Fish USA. They got tons of them. Fish USA is an incredible website too. If you've never checked it out, I apologize ahead of time for your credit card being maxed out. Also, if you're just doing this plain and simple, it's really just get this thing down to the bottom, or anchor your boat, get this thing down to the bottom, downriver, and that's all I'm doing all night. I'm whipping all night. Might seem weird at first, especially if you've never done this. It was definitely weird for me at first, and when I caught that first fish, I was like, man, I must be doing something right. I do have all the equipment needed now to be a pro at whipping, but again, I could still go out there with the other guy and use my 6.5 foot or 5 foot. I could use a kiddie pole if I wanted to and do the same method, and it's still going to produce the exact same way. Don't let the equipment get in your way. All you need is a 3-way swivel, 1 to 2 ounce sinker weight, 6 to 8 ounce leader line, attached to a floating number 9 even. I like number 11s, but just because there's more hooks on there, it's a little bigger profile in the middle of the night. But F11, floating Rapala, or a number 10 Husky Jerk, just get it to the bottom, whip it. Get it to the bottom, whip it. Obviously, this will work a little bit better if you know the river, or you're starting to learn the river a little bit where the fish are hanging out. This is why this is really all a 1-2-3 hit combo. Remember, I talked about, if you watched my first video leading into these, I talked about how I jig in the morning, I spinner all through the day, and then I do this at night. So what that does is, normally if I'm jigging, I've already kind of got a spot pinned out where I know the fish are. Now when I'm spinner fishing, what I'm doing all day is I'm usually going to do one long drift, maybe about half mile, maybe even longer stretch of water. And I'm going to be keeping in my mind, okay, I got hit twice in this little tiny area. I get hit 3 times in this tiny area. And kind of just keeping a mental note of where those areas are where I really caught a lot of fish spinner fishing, and that's where I'm going to go back to and visit when I'm whipping. A lot of people will find, you'll see the same boats in the same spot all year because they've kind of found and locked into a spot that really does produce. And again, we're not really we're really stationary here when we are whipping, so understand that you do have to be kind of spot on the spot and find where those fish are hanging out. But I promise you, if you find where they're hanging out, you get this rig down, hit the bottom, get a 3-way 6 to 8 inch attached to a floating Rapala, and you're whipping it all night. I promise you, you'll link into a fish. That's it. That's whipping in a nutshell. I mean, obviously there's more to it, but if you've been wondering about it, just go out there with your traditional pole, with that rig I just told you, and find a spot where you've been catching them on the bottom bouncers, and you will catch fish whipping all through the night. That's the cool part about it, is you can go out there all through the night. I've caught fish all the way up to 3 a.m. doing this, and it's a lot of fun. Bring a headlamp, bring some mosquito spray, because the mosquitoes can get pretty bad. And go catch some fish. That's really all it's about. So tight lines, everybody. I really appreciate you for jumping on this. I know this was a little bit longer one, but this was a method that is not used a whole lot. So I wanted to explain a little bit more in depth. Could do me 2 favors. I'd greatly appreciate it. Number 1, hit that subscribe button. I'm doing this for you guys. If you could do that one little favor for me, that'd be appreciated. Number 2, another like on this video would also be appreciated. And if you find this video at all helpful, share it to a friend. Go out there and start whipping and catching some more fish in the middle of the night. It's a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys. Have a good one.